Hello lovelies, buckle up chuckle fucks, because today I want to talk about something contentious. I know, quelle surprise. Something contentious that's been rattling around in the old skull oatmeal for a little while now. The disproportionate seeming number of disabled folk that I see and run into throughout the tabletop role-playing game design sphere, including myself, obviously. I keep bumping into myself everywhere that I go. It's like I'm stalking myself or something. Now, this whole thought process isn't particularly scientific. I've tried, and I've failed to apply science and statistics and so on to it. And I'm not wearing a lab coat or anything, though I do own one that I should probably use in a presentation again at some point. However, subjectively, it does certainly feel, and has for a very long time felt, that there are a lot of us people with disabilities and challenges in the trenches of TTRPG creation who are, hobbling, limping, wheezing, or just Nero spicy in some way, as the TikTok kids like to say. There's a few reasons why this has come crashing to the front of my lobes recently. There's the perennial online bar brawl over stuff like combat wheelchairs, the gift that keeps on giving for YouTube engagement, like super gonorrhea. My own bloody laundry list of medical woes, and those of my friends and co-workers. The UK government sharpening its knives to carve up disability benefits again, because empathy is apparently too expensive, even for a ostensibly left-wing Labour government. And oddly, the creeping, inescapable rise of artificial intelligence, so-called, which I think could potentially be a boon for disabled creatives, despite all the people constantly shitting and vomiting all over themselves about it online, which is yet another perpetual bun fight that we can all profit of. So let's crack this diseased but metaphorical clam open and see what the bastard's guts look like. So why the hell are there so many disabled RPG designers? And are there? Well, here's what I think, and it's going to be part speculation, part observation, and part wild stab in the dark with a vampiric dagger. First off, RPG designers skew old. RPG players skew increasingly old. Gaming has been around since the mid-70s in the previous century. That's quite a while now. And old people, well, surprise, they start falling apart with increasing rapidity. Joints click, go, backs seize up, the brain fog rolls in like something from The Mist, and suddenly you've forgotten the armor class of a kobold, and that space in your brain has now been replaced with a plot summary from an episode of NCIS. Age and disability often go hand in hand, and TTRPG design is one of those rare creative fields where being a grizzled old bastard still tends to help your credibility. It can grant you minor celebrity status. You're an industry legend, not a creaking old crank. Secondly, I think it's low impact work. You don't need to swing a pickaxe or run marathons. You don't have to burn the midnight oil, though you often might. All you really need is a relatively cheap computer, not even one that's particularly powerful. A notebook maybe, and enough energy to smash keys and maybe argue about alignment systems on Twitter or something. Thirdly, it's home-based. You can do this job in your dressing gown covered in Dorito dust with a hot water bottle wedged between your ruined vertebrae, and nobody really gives a shit. In fact, it's probably expected, except you're expected to be in a basement as well. This kind of behaviour while you're working is pretty much de rigueur. And it's not just the main business that this is true of, but adjacent hustles like layout, editing, crowdfunding, podcasting, making YouTube videos can all be done from home, in your own time, at your own pace, in your own pants, or someone else's if you prefer other pants are available, or in nothing at all. Like I'm not wearing trousers. Fourthly, there's a low barrier to entry, which is both a blessing and a curse of the TTRPG industry. You don't need to print thousands of copies anymore, and you don't have to have them shipped hither and yon and come to deals with distributors. PDFs, ebooks, print-on-demand tech, this has all democratized the hell out of publishing in general and RPG publishing in particular. You can fart out a 16-page micro-dungeon, slap a public domain skeleton on the front, and bosh, sorted, you're a publisher. And at least one sucker will probably buy it, even if it's just your nan. Fifth, and this one might sting a little, but I think it's true, the push for representation in RPG spaces has, in a weird way, helped put more disabled and neurodivergent creators front and center, which is again a rather mixed blessing. And while I think identity politics can suck a bushel of fresh-picked dew-speckled dicks, disability has a practical and materialist concern, which pleases the tiny little Karl Marx that sits on my left shoulder. It may, however, explain why it feels like so many creators are disabled, and it may create the impression that more of them are than actually are, because they're so much more visible than everyone else. And this goes for people in other identity categories as well, though without so much of a material concern to it. So let's talk about reasonable accommodations. This is a phrase that turns up in a lot of legislation about people with disabilities and their interface with the world of work. It's not just a legal phrase. It's basically the idea that if you're going to hire or work with someone who has a disability, you don't have to rebuild the Sistine Chapel to make it accessible to crippled fucks, but you should at least do the basics. You know, what's reasonable? Reasonable is a very weird legal standard, but it is a legal standard nonetheless. In the States, you've got the Americans with Disabilities Act. Over here in the UK, it's the Equality Act. Similar vibes. Businesses mustn't discriminate, and they have to make reasonable adjustments to support disabled workers. So in real terms, that might mean adding ramps to the entrances, allowing more flexible working hours, letting people work remotely as much as necessary. Not being a cunt about sick days probably helps, and giving people access to assistive tech or software. So this used to be things like Dragon Naturally Speaking, wrist rests, foot rests, other health and safety stuff that businesses are supposed to give to everybody, but it's especially important when it comes to disabled workers. Here's where we run into another problem, however. Most indie TTRPG outfits are basically one dude, a cat, maybe a stressed out partner doing layout or artwork in the background. These are shoestring affairs, running on extremely tight margins, possibly just as hobbies, and they probably run, a lot of them, by people who are crips themselves. So these are not corporations. These are hustles, passion projects, side gigs. Most of them can barely accommodate a budget to produce anything, yet alone employ anyone directly, or having the money free to accommodate anyone directly. Of course, if you hire freelancers, then the responsibility of accommodating themselves is more on them. But as employers employing freelancers, we can still make certain reasonable accommodations as well. There's just less legal impetus upon us to do so. Then you've got platforms like Kickstarter, BackerKit, itch.io. They provide the infrastructure for the new-ish crowdfunding superstructure, but do they provide accommodations for disabled and neurospicy people? in our limited investigations recently, which is another reason I'm doing this, it doesn't especially seem like it. Try running a crowdfunding campaign if you have limited cognitive function, general anxiety, or an unpredictable chronic condition that might flare up and knock months out of your work schedule. Watch people refuse to back your project if you're honest about the limitations of your condition, and watch them shriek and complain if you keep it hidden until it is a problem. Try dealing with customer service, backer updates, stretch goals, agents working for this structure that's supposed to be helping you, shipping spreadsheets and so on, when your brain feels like it's full of antisocial sea monkeys in a council-run sink estate. It's a bloody miracle even healthy people manage crowdfunding campaigns, let alone people with issues. So now let's step into the minefield of AI. The Luddite hysteria around this has reached fever pitch. On one side, you've got people acting like it's the coming of the Omnissiah, come to deliver us all from toil and stress, though they repeatedly refuse to consider how someone might make a living in this brave new world they want to foist on us all. And on the other hand, you've got pitchfork-wielding mobs shrieking theft and Frankenstein at every generated image of a glowing sword or a third-rate pastiche of Ghibli art. And there they are, Canute-like, trying to hold back the tide of technological change like some Timu-created Butlerian jihad. And me, I'm in the middle as per fucking usual, nuanced and intellectual. A second and third order thinker. Annoying, smug, correct, annoyingly so. But here's what people aren't talking about, and probably should be. AI, so-called, it is a fucking godsend for disabled creators. It's a productivity boost. For those of us who work in spurts between bouts of pain, brain fog, mental health crashes and so on, AI can help bridge the gap, speed things up. It can ejaculate shitty first drafts onto a page with little guidance. It can summarize, it can edit, it can fill in the blanks, it can spuff out a bunch of ideas to help you break your writer's block. Then we can come in and shape and edit and sculpt it and turn it into something good and give it our own personal non-AI flavour. We can sculpt that AI-produced jism of ideas into a shiny new creative baby with less of our precious spoons and time going to waste. So it can help. For people who are neurodivergent, so if you've got ADHD, autism, dyslexia, AI can structure, clarify, organise. It can turn the chaos of schizophrenic nonsense and word vomit into something more manageable and comprehensible. That's something powerful. AI can act as a sort of cognitive prosthesis. It's like a fucking wheelchair for your brain. It can remember things you forget, remind you of stuff, help you stay on track. It's not perfect. It has drawbacks. There are issues about the data scraped to produce this AI. But, you know, it's not perfect, but neither are my feet or my back. And I walk with a stick when I need to. And I don't get assaulted in the street by people claiming that using a stick infringes on walking people. And it's learned from them. And it's stolen the idea of legs. That doesn't happen. Longevity is also, I think, something we need to consider here. You can train an AI on your own work and then let it assist you rather than replacing you. Think of it like an apprentice that never sleeps. For older creators, that might mean that you're able to stay productive for longer without keeling over into an early grave with your laptop or paintbrush still clutched in your cold dead hand. It might allow them to keep going. But try saying any of this, try making any sort of reasonable argument, and you'll be lumped into one mob or the other. You'll be accused of selling your soul to Skynet rather than just trying to flip the script for the crips. and let them work better and compete with normies. So here's the uncomfortable truth then. For disabled creators, AI could be a tool that does let us compete with the normies, and the righteous fury of anti-AI activists, however well-intentioned, is starting to feel like yet another barrier to entry for disabled people just trying to keep up, stay involved, stay productive, and make some kind of living despite the impositions of their conditions. To me, using AI in this way is no more cheating than a voice dictation app, or a screen reader, or a mobility scooter, or a robot voice once you lose the ability to speak. It's a tool that could be abused. I mean, Stephen Hawking's voice box could have been abused for him to do drive-bys and insulting people. I've had your mum. But it also has legitimate, liberating, positive uses that are being overlooked in the frenzy of righteous anger to attack it. I try not to use it too much. Where I do, it's always as a minority part of an integrated workflow that just uses it to get over the bumps. But it can and it does help, I will admit it, when I'm having a bad brain or body day. When I've talked with other disabled creators, especially those with neurospicy issues or psychological issues, they tend to use it too, and they also see the potential in it for helping people like them. This isn't about churning out slop, that's a misuse of the technology. This is about making space, accommodations, if you will, for the potential positive role that it can inhabit in our lives. Do the numbers back me up though? So I wanted to test my gut feeling about this. Are disabled people and neurospicy people really overrepresented in TTRPG design? So here's what I found, though small sample size because social media wants you to pay to be seen by people. On Twitter/X, only 6% of people there that of those surveyed identified as disabled. But Twitter is full of right-wing trolls and anime avatars pretending to be free speech martyrs, and I probably shouldn't have included the I just want to click, so it's actually higher than that. Still, Twitter is fairly low trust and fairly right-wing these days, and poor and disabled people are more likely to be more left-wing or to affiliate with protest political parties or single-issue groups, things like that. So with that taken into account, you can see why Twitter would be skewed against this. Facebook, however, the percentage on my survey there, again, very small sample size and biased to people I know, which is, again, biased. That was about 26%, which is high, but Facebook tends to skew older, which helps explain that. It's less ideologically polarized than Twitter. It's also less public, so the info was largely limited to people I already know and who know me. And then in my own informal polling, which was me going into people's profiles and creeping on them, I found a total of about 16%. And we can compare that to similar broader creative industries where people have done proper surveys, conducted properly. In 2023, the UKIE, it's the UK Interactive Entertainment Group, they did a survey and they found that 13% of people that's more computer games, but about 13% were disabled, about 23% were neurodivergent. There'll be some overlap there, so we can safely say at least 23% of people involved in the broader interactive creative community, including board games, computer games, all the rest of it, are at least neurodivergent, and a significant portion are disabled. Keep in mind that this is also post-COVID, which we have to factor in to all of these calculations. So if we compare that to the general population in the UK, so we can compare like for like with UKIE, Of working age in the UK, about 15% of people are neurodivergent and about 10% are disabled. Again, there's crossover there, so we can safely say at least 15% of people in the UK are either neurodivergent or disabled. In the US, people say about 11%, but I suspect there's cultural issues behind that, and that only measures disability. So it does look like we are overrepresented compared to the general population in these sort of creative, interactive industries. Especially once you factor in overlap, hidden disabilities, people who aren't registered, who should be, and all the rest of it, and the post-COVID spike in both long-term illness and mental illness. But the data is about as clear as mud, and I don't have the money to do a proper survey, but I would trust the UKIE data more than my data, even though it all seems to sort of back itself up. What isn't arguable, however, is that there are disabled people and they deserve to have reasonable accommodations, especially with the potential for a global recession and an ideological squeeze on the public finances in many countries. This is also a lot of people that are going to need accessible and flexible work as well. So what is the takeaway from me wonking on for about 20 minutes? Honestly, I'm still figuring it all out. I started down this path thinking I want to do more to help disabled and neurodivergent creators as the world turns to shit, especially for them. And I still do. For one thing, that demographic includes me. I don't, however, want to allow that goal to twist the product or to pander and talk down to my fellow cripple fucks. Rather, I want to address these real materialist concerns. Thanks, Carl. I don't want to do this because of identity politics or virtue signaling that borders on fetishism. I'd rather deep throat a camel that's just fucked a cactus. I want to do it because materially, practically, there are people who are gonna get screwed over. And they're gonna get screwed over first, and they're gonna get screwed over the hardest when all the safety nets begin to snap. And TTRPG work can be remote, flexible, low impact, low investment, and compatible to a degree with disability benefits and so on. Relatively small amounts of money, which is not anything to be proud of, but which can be stretched out and paid out to work around various issues that one finds with paying work interfering with benefits, because nobody has any joined up thinking, apparently. But we can only do this if we allow for all of these reasonable accommodations, including AI to a degree. We have to demand these accommodations, and we have to push back here and there where appropriate on knee-jerk anti-AI sentiment. You can't just rip someone's wheelchair away and say, "Walk, motherfucker." We need to see the full picture and consider the full picture. So yeah, maybe I'll start prioritizing the hiring of disabled and neurospicy folks in the future. Maybe I kinda already do. I do try to hire people who need the help the most when they need the help. Maybe this community, for all its flaws, meaning the TTRPG community, is already doing something pretty bloody special and thinking ahead in a way that we kinda always have, which is weird for an analog hobby. Like so much else, we tend to be ahead of the technological curve on things like this, at least ahead of general society. And maybe for once we should build on that lead and take some pride in it. But as always, remember, Zang, and I've had your mum. Hello lovelies, I'm terrible at pimping my stuff, so here I am, pimping my stuff. Please like, subscribe, and most important of all, share so that people can discover me and all the wonders that I offer.